before we get going, I want to thank the student assistants, my GAs from this semester. You can see them behind me in 750, Victor and Maddie, and Sarah, who's at home. So if you hear them, that's who they are. We begin tonight with Franz Castro, and I'm very excited to have her. And actually, we also have, we'll have Elise Shoreland later. And Elise, Franz, and Mona were our best election night executive producers ever. And they were just terrific. So we have the three of them in this reunion, which I didn't even realize. So Franz is a new mom, and congratulations on your baby who's already 6 months old. I can't believe it. And her thesis doc was finding fathers, about people who lost their fathers in World War II and grew up never knowing who they were. And Franz is from Normandy. And so she grew up with the ceremony every year, and it was a great piece. Most recently, she is the executive producer and director of High Score series on Netflix, and we're going to show you the trailer.
Video games afford you the opportunity to start over. In games, we all start at the exact same place to play together because we're all playing by the same rules.
Long before the internet, a handful of visionaries reimagined the world.
We felt that we were creating world-changing technology.
I had no idea what to expect.
何回もゲームやってみようというそういうようなゲームだったので。
Pac-Man is so cute. Rudy is so cute.
People no longer played video games, they played Nintendo.
It all started when our hero Mario had a very strange dream.
Having a fast console wasn't enough for Sega. They needed a new hit game.
やはりアメリカで人気になるようなキャラクターになってほしいっていう思いもある。You'd see kids screaming, Sega, Sega! They woke up Nintendo. We have the biggest consumer electronics company on the planet. Coming after us? Awesome.
It is a sick video game. Shame on people that produce that trash. I made the worst game of all time.
What we did back then was ahead of its time, but the time is now.
So talk to us about your visual thinking on this piece, and what were the hardest parts and what were some of your solutions?
I mean, it's funny because I ended up having to make a documentary series about video games, and the one before was about the internet. So I was just like, all right, I am screwed. It's the last visual thing you can do ever. And on High Score in particular, it was a lot about the past. So how do you make this cinematic? So it's not just going to be sit-down interviews cut with archive and so on and so on. So we looked at potential scenes and what inspired these people and what could we film with them. So for example, one of the Japanese creators of Street Fighter said that he really got inspired by locations. And so we went to film in a bathhouse because that's why there is a scene in the game that's about this. And I think, you know, it's really about stepping in the mind of these creators, and video games are so visual themselves that we had to make sure the show would be colorful. And so we really thought about scenes, and then we also try to make sure that our animation, whenever they would come, wouldn't feel like wallpaper, but that they actually would have some sort of a pulse and emotions, and that we always had transition shots getting us in and out. And yeah, trying to be as cinematic as we could be, and also making sure the scenes are relevant with the story. I mean, for Sonic, we go into an attraction park, and that's just because he mentioned that. And I think when, you know, I was speaking to the students, and I'm sure they remember, but that's what I think pre-production is key, because all these scenes and these ideas just stem from our conversation with the characters before heading to the field. So just like, okay, tell me about your process, tell me about how you get ideas. All right, let's think about a scene and how we can do it, because that's not really like a verite type of documentary.
So you had those in-depth conversations before you interviewed them?
Yeah, I mean, we had quite a few. I mean, obviously with a Japanese character, it's different, and we had some fixers, but yeah, we spoke to everybody at length, and obviously had to get characters approved by Netflix as well before heading to the field. So we had to make sure that we really knew our people. And again, going back to the budget, you know, we don't have that many days in the field. You need to know your scene, you need to know what you're filming. Not saying that you shouldn't, you know, leave room for authenticity and whatever happens and captures a moment, but we really had to do a lot of thinking ahead.
Next up is Sharon Shadduck, who hosts a podcast series for Gimlet Media, and she's the producer and director of a new feature documentary, not out yet, called Picture of a Scientist, and we will show you the trailer.
This genetics, this molecular biology, that was the answer to all the questions I'd ever had about everything. We were just trying to be scientists. We certainly didn't want to be seen as troublemakers.
People said, what happens in the field stays in the field.
It was bullying from day one. He would tell me women were altering the science on the ice for worse.
What's going to happen if I report him? What happens if I don't report him? It was getting really physical.
I didn't tell anybody because who's going to believe you? You know, nobody.
Women are extraordinarily underrepresented in science.
When you ask somebody, draw a picture of a scientist, it used to be all men.
There's a playbook, and it was written by men. And I always felt I didn't have the playbook. You know, I'm just feeling my way through this game.
You get used to being underestimated. You get used to being invisible.
These are great scientists. How can they not believe this?
Many of the women that I've spoken to have left.
This is the leaky pipeline.
They cannot say the evidence doesn't exist.
So I thought, okay, I have to show them it's true. So I wrote, there's a kind of systemic and invisible discrimination against women. Can we really afford to lose those top scientists?
He just needs to look at the data. That's what he'd want us to do for his science.
You cannot do everything on your own. You need enough of your allies to make something happen.
I expected to fight alone. I didn't expect anybody else to fight with me.
Together, we can do better.
Let's move away from a culture of compliance and towards a culture of change.
If you don't have women, you've lost half the best people. Look at the talent of these women. This is worth fighting for.
Hi, I was having trouble. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of the film, and it's been a weird year. You know, we were supposed to premiere at Tribeca, and we had gotten the announcement that we were going to be in the festival, and then we were so excited, and then like within like a, you know, then like oh gosh, what was it, South by Southwest, and then it started, like COVID started to happen and creep across the country, and we just had the sinking feeling that it wasn't going to premiere. So yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still going to be great, and you're
Yeah.
still going to have a great premiere whenever that happens. So
yeah.
Sharon started with us with her thesis documentary, doing a science-based story. It was on parasites, a user's guide, and she's a great animator and was then, and then moved to a personal documentary close to my heart, From This Day Forward, about her father and her mom and her family dynamics. How did you go from there to coming back to science and doing this documentary?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, this is it's a film about scientists, but it's just a very personal film, because it's about these women. It follows three different scientists who've had these different struggles with gender, with harassment and with gender bias.
So like Franz, you had some visual challenges in making some of the stories come alive because it was in the past, and science doesn't necessarily have a lot of action videos to go with it. So what were some of the challenges and how did you solve them?
That was the main one. It was like, one of our stories is about a advisor who sexually harasses and actually like assaults this woman. And then there are other stories where like this person's whole career, she's had all these little microaggressions kind of pile up over the years, and she needed to prove, basically, she tried to go to her administrators and say, hey, I have half as much lab space as the rest of the senior men in my department. And the administrators were like, oh, no, you don't. And she's like, well, that's easily proven. And so she went around and measured, with a tape measure, all of the lab space. And so we had a lot of like great visual moments from the past. And so we knew we wanted to bring those to life, but we didn't want to do it in like a cheesy or like heavy-handed way. So that was our challenge.
Next, I'd like to introduce Elise Shorland to you. She's a documentary director, producer on film series for HBO, CNN Films, FX, Epics. She's was with us in 2008, and her thesis was called Against the Tide, about Maryland crab fishermen. And she did just a terrific job of bringing them out and their problems and the issues about the environment. But what we're going to focus on today is not something that she directed for the New York Times, The Weekly, or Bloomberg, or Vice News, but a recent film called On the Trail. This is sort of in the genre of In the Back of the Bus, where journalists cover presidential campaigns. And her focus was on women. Isn't that nice? We have a theme going here. So we're going to show you the trailer.
It can get a little hairy. See, here they come. There is nothing like the rush of covering a presidential campaign. We are CNN's eyes and ears on the ground. We need to stand by to be ready to go. For the embeds, you're on a campaign bus, you're at a rally, your life is not your own. We are in the thick of it right now. We get a front row seat to history. I can't imagine a closer front row seat than this. Everybody has a correspondent, even Donald Trump.
Trump's the only president I've ever covered. When the president goes after the press,
the fake news, these guys,
the crowd join in. It's definitely hostile. You still have to do your job. I have no emotion, so it's perfect. I'm like half kidding.
People always ask, oh my God, you have kids. How do you do it? It's tough to be away from your kids, but in order to tell the story, you have to go to the story.
Young and I work very well together. I don't think I would be as successful in my job without her.
Jasmine knows the story and she's gonna speak her mind.
People can think what they want about me because I'm still gonna get the job done, and better than most of y'all.
Sometimes I wake up and I forget where I am.
The coronavirus pandemic is changing everything.
I am your president of law and order.
We thought 2016 was crazy.
It's stressful. It's like I don't really breathe until the day is over.
You also just feel like you have to say something, because if you're not gonna say it, then who is?
What we have is an economic crisis, public health crisis, social crisis.
This moment is unlike any other.
The question of what kind of leader do I want has never been more real than right now.
When I saw this, I thought this is perfect for Elise because she was such a great producer. She was totally organized, particularly as a line producer in the studio. You ask Elise to do something, it is already done.
We had 6 months to make this 90-minute film, start to finish. So, you know, chasing the primaries across the country and following these reporters, we had 3 teams going at any given time, often simultaneously. And so figuring out where they needed to be and how long they needed to be there and where people were going. And as you can imagine, it changed minute by minute.
So you had 5 teams?
We had 3 teams of producer, AP, and DP. And we would sort of shift them around the country where we needed them to be at any given time.
Was it easy to work with people who know what it is like to work with a camera and to be in front of it and behind it?
These women, yes, they were very understanding. They were really, it was like having a conversation with them where you could just go to steps, 3 because they already knew what 1 and 2 were. The disconnect was often because we're doing a film, we moved a little slower. We weren't necessarily, we were run and gun, but run and gun in news and run and gun in documentary are 2 different things. So we would sometimes have to be like, whoa, we're not ready, or hold on. Gotta change the lens, calm down.
But I bet they spoke in nice sound bites and
They did, but that could be a challenge too, right? Because you want them to, we wanted to get to a point with them where they were willing to let down their guard and talk about what it meant to be objective or what it meant to have a different background. The film was really hoping to explore something that these women would help illuminate for us, which is how your background as a human can make you a better reporter, and that those 2 things don't have to operate independent of each other.
So let's talk about the embeds. This was a new term for me. It's young people who devote their lives to the campaign, and they schlep camera gear and 1 suitcase around with them, and they never go home. They just stay on the road with the candidate. And they were 25 to 27 years old?
I think the oldest was like 30, 31. But yeah, they're in that sort of range where it's not their first job, but they're still sort of young enough to be able to upend their lives for 3 months. 2 years, actually. Some of them were on the road for literally 2 years. Oh yeah, and feeding every detail back to the network and knowing everything about their candidate. And they, it's a great crash course in becoming a real expert on one thing, because you know everything about Kamala Harris, or you know everything about Joe Biden, or you know everything about whomever candidate you're chasing, and they're still young enough to not be jaded or beaten down by the news cycle, if you will. And so they're very excited, and they become really close with each other. One of the gossipy parts of the film is that we couldn't get permission from the other networks to use their embeds in the film. So we lost a whole storyline about how the embeds really became family with each other, which would have been wonderful to explore. But, Fox News wasn't so eager to have their embed be in a CNN documentary. So we lost that fight, but yeah.
Got it. Our last alum is Runza Yu. He's the director and producer of the documentary short, The Wives, and that evolved from his thesis doc, Homo Wives, which was a great it was a great documentary that he then turned into a personal documentary. And I've just introduced the personal documentary form in class, and students are really getting excited about it as a storytelling mode. So that's really fun for me that people find their voice. I want to know, Runza, about the state of that project, but also about the growing NewsDoc Chinese alumni network.
Yeah, like right now, went out and meet maybe for a new project. I'm saying I graduated from NYU. They said, "Oh, you NYU guys, we already have a reputation here in China right now, thanks to Nanfu and Rongfei and also Mu Zijian."
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, these three people are really important in the industry. So it helps the rest of us to more easy to get jobs.
So you're directing and you're shooting now.
Yes, and editing.
And editing. Wow.
Yes.
Namfu asked us not to give any details of her new project, but I was fortunate to see some of it, and I was very moved by certain footage, and she said Runza shot that. So I was just so proud of you, so proud of you. It was a very still moment that you captured really beautifully. So
I think it's from what I learned at NYU, and also like the tutoring from the alumni.
You warm my heart that you're all here and the faculty stayed. It's really great. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See your family.
Bye.
Bye.